You're listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show, the first show of 2024. I'll be your host this evening, Ali. You can follow me on Twitter not Twitter, X, get with the times as 2024, at FF Dynasty Grill. Talking of the changing times, we've also got my amazing co-host, Kev, who is technically still the Dynasty GOAT, but he's no longer the Dynasty GOAT because you can follow him on X at the Dynasty Mind. Kev, how you doing tonight, my friends?
New year, new me, had to be done. I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Week 17, truly unbelievable. It's probably my new favourite week of the season, with obviously championship finals and the college football semis as well was fantastic. So what a great weekend. Plenty of ups and downs. It's why we love the sport. I had a team that was playing against Gardner Minshew and Najee Harris at QB and got smashed. So yeah, lots of fun, lots of unpredictable things happening, but yeah, really solid week. How was your ships?
Yeah, it was really good, exciting. There was a lot of randomness that happened. I played against CeeDee Lamb in 50% of those, so predictably I lost 50% of those. I'm happy with 50%, 3 out of 6. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey, did not expect him to go down injured and hurt my chances of winning another couple of ships. But there we are. Yep, the college bowls are going on. Exciting times. We now turn to rookie season, which is very exciting. Diving into a load of the prospects for 2024. Yeah, cannot wait. But we must recap week 17 first, and we're going to do it without our other amazing co-host, Mags, who is still a bit upset about the Chiefs. They managed to get the win, but they're still not the Chiefs. We didn't see the big Kelsey Mahomes bounce back. Yeah, nearly lost that game. So he's hiding it under a pillow right now. Hopefully be back next week when, yeah. Let's move on to week 17 of the Dynasty season. And there was some really, really interesting performances. The first one, it's the MVP of the league. No question about it right now for me. And we've called this Lamar Jackson anchor leg. And love this, Kev, because we've got the anchor leg, which is like the last leg of a relay race.
Oh, yeah.
It was the championship. It was coming down to the final 100 meters. And you wanted Lamar Jackson on that baton because he clearly won you the championship. And also, Anchor's on a ship, and we want to win championships. So it's absolute perfection, Kev. And it was only one person we could start with, really. It was, the real-life MVP, the guy
Who thought that gag?
I know, a smart guy. He's perhaps got a smart mind. You might know him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well done, Max.
So, talking of not so smart mind is myself, because I was probably a little bit wrong about Lamar Jackson this season in terms of his sort of real life play. The last few weeks I've been kicking it for Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill to be in the MVP race, and it's only ever been quarterbacks, which has really, really got me riled. But then to sort of faltered a little bit towards the end, and Lamar Jackson's really taken it forward. Such an impressive showing this week. Quarterback 1 in week 17, 5 passing touchdowns on the Miami Dolphins, 321 yards. 35 yards on the ground, which was actually looking, it's his lowest rushing output since week 8, which was interesting. And he's had no rushing touchdowns since week 7, which was quite staggering. And he's only had 3 games this year where he's actually had a rushing touchdown, which is bizarre when you think about Lamar Jackson. Then actually when I dived into his figures, we know that he rushes for he cranks up the yards on the ground, but he's not known for running in touchdowns. So in 86 career games, he's actually only ran in 29 rushing touchdowns. Then I compared that to Jalen Hurts, who's started only 61 career games, and he's rushed for 41 rushing touchdowns, which is insane output of touchdowns, which is actually really impressed me for Lamar, because he's not doing it on the ground with all these tush pushers and so on. He's actually doing it through the air, and the quality of his passing this year has been really impressive, especially when you Lamar what he's shown this year. Quarterback 3, I believe, finish on the season. It has been up and down. You have to say, certainly been up and down. There was definitely disappointing spells earlier in the season. I know I've got a couple of championship winning teams with him on, but it was a bit of a struggle earlier in the season. But yeah, the way he's finished the season been really impressive. If they can just keep Todd Monken as OC, I really like this style of play where he's airing the ball out much better. He is a really good passer, so I really like that. I just think that I'm more bullish on Lamar, more than probably I ever have been. Must admit, halfway through the season, I did start having my doubts, just because there was a lot of down performances. The defense is really good. The Ravens were winning games with him not having to do that much, which is absolutely fine, but he's not giving you that ceiling where he sort of showed it down the stretch. So I'm really bullish again. But Kev, how would you sum up Lamar's season, and where do you now have him in terms of, I know you don't put out your rankings mid-season, but where would you have him in terms of perhaps the tier that he's in? Obviously, RB3 finished on the year. Does he now belong in the top tier, or is he still just a bit below for you?
I think, first of all, it just takes me back to last season, because I've got a lot of Lamar Jackson shares. And if you think back to the end of last season, he missed the final 6-7 games. It's pretty up and down. He had a hot start and then faded a little bit. So I think any managers that maybe missed out last season on ships because the star QB was out, they've probably got a good chance to have won those ships this season if they've maintained that roster and not blown it up. So I think just remember that you can have these type of seasons where you have a bounce back. Like Justin Herbert, he had a bad season last season. He's had a better one this, and then the injury. But just be wary that QBs, they can have little dips for certain reasons. Dak Prescott's another. He's having a fantastic season previously. He had a low one. So just be careful who you're fading, especially for the track record that they've been up there before and done it as Lamar has. I think in terms of where I had him pre-season, I was really high on him, QB4, which I got something right. So, yeah, I'm on record saying QB4. I just didn't feel it's QB5, so it's not everything's perfect, but I just love the upside. I love what he's done in the past. Bear in mind what he's done this without Mark Andrews. He's done this with Gus Edwards getting 13 rushing touchdowns, I think 18 rushing touchdowns from Edwards, Mitchell, Justice Hill on the ground. You'd like to think that at some stage that reverts back a little bit, and maybe if that's more near 14 and there's 4 more passing touchdowns, that's an even greater season. I think if you look at his numbers this year compared to others, he's very similar. He's very consistent. He's always around 19 and 20 points per game, other than when he had his MVP season, 27 odd points. So he's just really solid for me. I think there's got to be concerns with Mahomes, how he's looked. If there's concerns about Hurts, if they ban the tush push or the brotherly shove, how is that going to affect him? Josh Allen seems to be the safest out of those at the top, so I'd have no problem with him in that top 4 in my personal rankings, because I just think the other guys that's behind him that could maybe make that leap, it's a little bit too soon for Stroud, for Richardson. I don't think Herbert, Burrow and Lawrence have done enough yet. So yeah, I think you got to be really happy with what he's done to finish the season. Your biggest game of the season on the ankle leg. So yeah, for me, he's in that tier 1, and it's a tier of 4.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I had Joe Burrow ahead of him entering the season. Just seems rather a fragile player. His second sort of major injury. Still have him just below the top tier, but I think Lamar's probably made that leap where We have seen uncertainty from the other top quarterbacks, as you mentioned there. He's going to have down games. You don't really see many down games from Jalen Hurts, perhaps Josh Allen, but I think we know the ceiling with Lamar is absolutely massive. And as you mentioned, if some of those rushing touchdowns did then move across to Lamar, if he had an extra 5 of those rushing touchdowns, he's back in the RB1. RB1, the quarterback one, quarterback one on the year. So I think you have to have him in that top tier. I don't think I'd be moving him on for much less than one of those top guys, or you'd have to put quite a lot on top of the next guys down to entice me to sell Lamar right now, just because I think there's a situation where they could even go after another weapon in the off season with Bateman really fading away. Andrews has shown, fragility. He's obviously a top tier tight end, but is he going to stay healthy all the time? Doesn't always. They could go all in for, say, a 2 or 3 year window, and really go all out on a top wide receiver in free agency or via the draft. So, it is really exciting in what they can do under Todd Monken in year 2. So I think the arrow's firmly pointing up for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think one other thing as well, just to, if you're into spooky things in Destiny, when Lamar Jackson won his MVP in 2019, first game that season was Miami, 5 touchdowns. He's just playing Miami this season, 5 touchdowns, will he be MVP? Yeah.
Guaranteed. This next bloke has almost been the fantasy playoff MVP. Sensational, and we call him the boomerang because he once there and he's come back in a big way. Kev, over to you for some Joe Flacco chat.
Joe Flacco, yeah. I mean, we had to talk about the guy that lit up Thursday Night Football. The first big thing of it is it was the revenge game narrative, him and Elijah Moore going up against the Jets, and Amari Cooper being that late inactive after looking like he was destined to play. So I think the biggest thing, first of all, is did you start Joe Flacco on that evening? Because I'll hold my hand up in a lineup league. I've got loads of Flacco, but I didn't start him in any lineup leagues because I saw no Cooper and saw that Jets #1 defense, and I got worried. And I'm one of his biggest fans, so that's an error on my part. I should have maybe stuck him into one lineup that ended up with Jared Stidham in with injuries, etc. So I'd love to have that one back. Still wouldn't have won with the ship in that particular league, but you just want to get things right. So I think what he's done in 2023 is amazing. It's been a complete shock. I think easily from fantasy-wise, from offensive-wise, for actual play on the field, he's the comeback player of the year. He probably won't get it because of Damar Hamlin's heart attack he had last season. Coming back to play is a great story. But if we're talking pure performance, it's Joe Flacco, what he's done. I think it's just so unexpected. If you'd have said to me that Joe Flacco's taking the Browns to the playoffs and he's potentially going to meet the Ravens in the playoffs in the Ravens Stadium, beats them, takes them to the Super Bowl, it's a storybook. 2-time Super Bowl MVP Joe Flacco. It's got a nice ring to it. So, yeah, I guess the big thing I want to know from you, Ali, is do you think he'll be a starter in 2024? It's not going to be the Browns, is it, because of the Watson contract? But where would you want him to go for dynasty purposes? And can he be that starter, do you think?
Well, you say it won't be the Browns. When the Browns go on and win the Super Bowl, how can you go back to Deshaun Watson if you're the Browns and Joe Flacco just won you a Super Bowl? I think it's very difficult. Difficult because that fan base will be massively on Flacco to keep the job, I would imagine. It's a difficult one with Flacco. I just think from where he was in the New York Jets, I think he was fine. He seems to have beefed up. He's obviously hit the gym. He looks more bendy, athletic than he did, if I could even describe him as athletic.
Bendy like a boomerang.
Yeah. Bend it like Flacco.
Way.
I don't know. if he's ever going to be a starter, I mean, I don't think he's going to be named a starter right away. I don't think there can be a fan base that really gets excited about Joe Flacco being named their, start of the season number one quarterback star. I think he'd have to be in a quarterback competition for next season. But all we want really is just a team with decent weapons. I mean, what he's had in Cleveland with Amari Cooper, David Njoku, legendary tight ends,
best.
Elijah Moore, obviously one of his favorite targets in the world. It's all we really ask for. So there's teams out there, but if you're looking at, I mean, Washington came to mind, but I mean, they're going to be drafting their quarterback, I would imagine. Now they've got top 3 pick. Think about the Raiders. There's teams out there like Denver. What are Denver going to do with their quarterback situation? Can they get Flacco on a cheap and be their quarterback there? A place I would absolutely love to see him, but it's not going to happen.
Come on.
I mean, he's already been in two teams in that division. Let's get him to Pittsburgh, and the weapons they've got there. I mean, that would just be sensational. Would be an upgrade on what they've got now, real life and fantasy. So, I mean, that's my dreamland spot for Flacco. Let's just go through that division slowly. Joe Burrow is going to get down in 2025 to an injury, and then Flacco is going to be the Bengals quarterback. So, yeah, let's get him there. But in terms of Dynasty, I don't think he's going to be a starter, but I do think he's an interesting asset to have on your team if you've got him right now. Obviously, if people believe he can be a starter, then by all means sell him. But be interesting piece to hold on to. I wouldn't be cutting him at the end of the season because there's a scenario where he could be in a quarterback battle and win that battle come the start of 2024 season.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one because you've got to hold on to him. You're definitely not cutting him. Rosters this time of year, I think we'll come on to it a little bit later on, but there's certain roster builds you want to do specifically this time of year, which when it gets close to the season, obviously you're not going to have 10 QBs on your bench, but while the jigsaw pieces fall into place, etc., you want to be prioritising that. I think it's going to be difficult to buy him off teams because of what he's doing in real life. Yes, there is the uncertainty that what job will he have? Where will he be? Will the Browns sign him? Does he have to come as a backup if they are sticking with Watson? Do they win a Super Bowl? Do they not? So I think it's difficult to buy him just as one piece. I think if you're going to try and get him, it has to be part of a bigger deal where you hide what you're actually after. And sometimes you have to do that if there's a specific asset that's got a bit of heat behind them, a bit of a name value, a bit of popularity in the moment. If you send a trade for that, it's going to get rejected. You're going to have to overpay big time. Make it as part of a bigger trade, and then they don't know which asset you're actually going for. You've got a better chance that way. Will be my tip.
Yep, absolutely love that. And we're going to move on to a big firework display because this guy absolutely lit up the playoffs, lit up championship week, lit me up for 3 of my championships. CeeDee Lamb, we call it firework display. Celebrate the new year with the fireworks. And really, it's another one that I've probably been slightly wrong on. So I'm going to hold my hands up and just say, yeah, I did earlier in the season put Amon-Ra St. Brown ahead of him in the same tier. So it's not massively wrong, but he was clearly listening to the show when I said that I'm going to move Amon-Ra St. Brown ahead of him. And then he just went on an absolute tear second half of the season after the bye. And it's another championship winner, wide receiver 1 on the week, 17 targets, 13 catches, 227 yards, and a tutty. Absolutely love to see that, unless you're going up against him, which I was. Since the week 7 bye, CeeDee Lamb's not only been the wide receiver 1, but he's been the wide receiver 1 by an absolute mile. So he's averaging 27.8 PPR points per game, which is mad. That's a leap for a quarterback stat, let alone a wide receiver. 278 fantasy points scored. The next highest wide receiver was Amon-Ra St. Brown with 180. So he's given you an extra 100 points since week 8. insane. So really, it just begs the question to me, and I've seen it come up on X. Is there now a case to be made for CeeDee Lamb not only to be in the top tier of wide receivers, should he be number one right now? This sort of be an interesting question to ask, because when you look at Justin Jefferson, obviously, is Kirk Cousins going to be coming back at quarterback next year? I think all signs point to that happening. I mean, how healthy is he going to be? Should be, fully healthy, but he's another year older, and is it only going to be for another year? And then there's even more uncertainty. Jamar Chase, either him or Burrow always seem to be injured, one or the other. It's obviously a more stable situation in terms of moving parts, but it's certainly not worked out this year. T. Higgins, is there? Is he going to be staying, or is he going to be moving on? Who knows right now? The one place where there's no question marks is CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott's coming up for a new deal. They're going to be there for the next few years. There's no doubt about it. So for you, Kev, is he actually in your top tier of wide receivers? Is he close, or is he number one? Is there a case to be made that he's perhaps number one, or is that going a bit too far?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see sort of how the market's reacted, and a lot of what I've seen on X, that people are still really bullish on Jamar Chase. That's the first thing that stands out. I think you have to work logically. The start of the season, the consensus was Jefferson, Chase, tier break, Lamb. Mm-hmm. So I think your first one is he's definitely jumped into that top tier 3. But then the question is he better than Lamb? I think as it stands, yes. I think just what the market will do when it gets to the off season, when it gets to May, June, July time, CeeDee Lamb's going to be going ahead of Jamar Chase's starts at the market overall. I think that might be influenced by T. Higgins and what happens with him. But yeah, people remember that Week 17 championship where they've either run into a buzzsaw and got smashed, or he's been on another team of theirs and they've got the win. So people remember Week 17s for the right or the wrong reasons. It can get you falling into traps on certain players. I think C.J. Anderson might have been one a few years back for the Broncos running back. He had a big Week 17 that was terrible. But yeah, I think he's above Chase. Do I think Chase in that tier of 3? I'm not sure. I think that's a real tricky one. I'd probably just play it safe at this stage and say it's those 3. But then the final question is Lamb or Jefferson. And your thought process is very similar to mine. I think I'm not gonna hate if you've got Lamb above Jefferson at this stage. There's lots of risk with Jefferson. The fact that Jordan Addison's had a promising rookie season. They've got Hawkinson, who, yes, he's injured, but when he's back, he's been a target hog. I don't think he's amazing, but he gets targets. Questions at QB. With Dallas, yeah, they're going to make some additions. I think tight end they're probably set, but wide receiver wise, I think they're at a stage now where they've seen Lamb do it. He does it from the slot. They're not necessarily going to need superstars on the outside, but I just think Dak, he's more solid than whoever the Vikings have got. I think the Vikings are going to do it's going to be very tricky for them to find anyone other than Cousins that's going to be anywhere near Cousins' level where they're going in the draft. So, yeah, CeeDee Lamb's well in contention for being wide receiver 1 overall, but I think it will be Jefferson, Lamb, Chase, if you're asking me what it'll look like in 3, 4, 5 months' time.
Yeah, I think absolutely spot on. He has to be in that top tier. And if someone said to me, you've got Kirk Cousins for 2 years, I think I'm happy to have Jefferson number 1. I think he's the best wide receiver in the NFL, other than Tyreek Hill probably. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb is just there because he's been so consistent. It's not just last year. I mean, at the start of this year as well, he was doing it massive game and then perhaps a little drop off to 10 points. But it's just now he's given you a baseline of 20 points plus per game with the boom games as well. The situation doesn't look like changing. The offense is absolutely clicking, especially at home. It's ridiculous. So the question is, I mean, it's very difficult to buy him right now. I think the only move to make is if you've got Jamar Chase and perhaps you are looking that you want to be a contender next year. The move would be I'd do it straight up for CeeDee Lamb. And there's a lot of people that will have Jamar Chase over CeeDee Lamb and they'll refuse to put CeeDee ahead of him just because of they think Jamar Chase is going to be what he showed last year was just incredible, but hasn't sort of built on top of that. But they still have him there because of his age, because he's with Joe Burrow. Especially if T. Higgins was to move on, then yeah, his value's still going to go soaring. So that's the move to make for me. Wouldn't be selling him right now unless you're going into a rebuild and you could get an absolute haul off the right person. But yeah, I think there's definitely an argument to be made for him to be wide receiver 1 going into the 2024 season. Speaking of top tier, we move on to a different position. Top tier running backs. Now, this can be a very, very interesting topic. So, Kev, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's something I wanted to touch upon again. Thursday Night Football, Breece Hall, he's been on a bit of a tear recently in the past game, which has stood out to me. I think it's given him more value than potentially we've seen before. And I think there's a lot to like in his profile. The fact that he's come back from major injury, he's got hot from sort of week 4 or 5 onwards to now. He's got Aaron Rodgers coming back. I think it's going to be a popular offense to buy into with that in mind, and Garrett Wilson there. So I think with Breece Hall as well, his market value stayed really steady when he's been injured. So he was the first guy that stood out to me in terms of bringing him up on the show tonight. But then Bijan Robinson again, just another really poor week for what you're expecting. If you're somehow in a championship with Bijan Robinson, he's not done it again for you. He's running about 19 in fantasy points per game on the season. Obviously, McCaffrey had his worst game of the season. You've got Gibbs who had a bad game as well. A-Chain had a great game against the Ravens. Jonathan Taylor was all right. So there's been indifferent performances at the top. I think Breece Hall stood out the most, but there's lots of concerns. Now we're into the off-season mindset. I just want to know who you think the top tier of running back is in your rankings, and I guess also who's at the most danger of dropping out of that top tier. So who's top tier and who's at the most risk?
So top tier, I would have possibly 5 running backs. In my top tier, I've not got the order set. I value them very, very similar. They're in a group of 6 running backs that I'm very, very interested in acquiring, and those are the 6 that I'm happy with. So it's difficult to say a 1, 2, 3. Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall probably very, very equal at the top. I still think Bijan Robinson will. I think the Falcons, that once they miss the playoff this weekend, they're saying they're sticking with Arthur Smith right now. Not quite sure that's going to happen in the off season. There's got to be a change there because they can't have all this talent and not use it. So I think if you're ranking him anywhere lower than RB 3 or 4, I think he's going to jump back up to RB1 at the start of next season. And then Jonathan Taylor and Devon A-Chain are the 2 other ones that I'm really happy with just because of what they're shown, what the potential is. They're in great situations. They've either got rookie contract or a good contract. Those are the 6 that I'm really happy with. And I mean, really the only one that is in danger of falling outside the top tier, I'd say none of them right now. And I don't think there's going to be much movement, especially when you think the rookie running back class that is coming in isn't spectacular. You've not got big names in there. I think it's just going to be Christian McCaffrey, just based on age and potential. If he gets one more major injury, we've already seen his value when he did get an injury over a year ago. Now his value almost tanked, where people were really unsure about where to pick him. Love the situation that he's in, but I just think he's probably the one, because you look at Devon A-Chain, you've obviously got Raheem Mostert surely moving on. What is he, 31 years old? Jonathan Taylor's just so secure. Breece Hall so secure. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's amazing. Even if Montgomery's continued to be there at the Lions, I just think it has to be McCaffrey, just based on the age, because he's so much older than the other guys in the top tier. So would you agree, or do you think there's someone else there that's at risk of dropping out?
No, I think you've got it spot on in the sense of it's either a 4 and a 2 or a 3 and a 3. And the key person is McCaffrey. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I said I'm happily scooping up at running back 4 because I'm thinking of this season, next season. But bearing in mind now, this season, next season is 2024 and 2025. So I think even this early, you have to consider, does McCaffrey now drop into that next tier? Because essentially, we don't right now. We don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs. I think they're going to play 1-2 playoff games, maybe 3. If everything goes to plan, they're in the Super Bowl. That's 3 more opportunities for him to get an injury, a bad injury potentially. Not that we're wishing it on anyone. He's got an injury now, but that's more risk than, I don't know, let's say a Bijan, because the Falcons have got 1 game left. So it comes down to McCaffrey. I think he will be running back 4 in the market, but I've seen crazy things happen. He might be running back 5. People might get high on Taylor again. People might think, oh, A-Chain is in his 10 games he's played, he's been top 8 5 times. He's been so explosive. Once Mostert's out of the way, just get him touches, get him healthy. Honestly, like, if A-Chain stays healthy, he's having a better season than Jahmyr Gibbs. People are talking about him as running back 1 overall if he plays all them games. So, McCaffrey's the one at the biggest risk. But it's like any standard analysis in Dynasty. It's just ageist, and you have to listen to the market. Like, yes, it is about winning chips, but you just got to see the overall picture as well. That, let's imagine that you made a trade week 16. I'm going to get McCaffrey for the ship, and then he does that. So, yeah, I think McCaffrey is the one. Yeah,
I think especially now we're into rookie season where everybody just wants the young, shiny new toys. McCaffrey doesn't look quite as good when there's no championships on the line. And you look at his age, 27?
I think 28. He'll be 29 next year.
28, 29 next year. There's a lot of people that aren't going to be in on McCaffrey, and that's probably wiping out 6 teams in your league that won't be interested in buying him. So his value has to drop. Whereas a Devon A-Chain, where his arrow's pointing up, everybody is going to want to buy him at the right price. So there's more of a market for those guys. So yeah. Talking of players losing value, we'll move on to the biggest sells going into 2024. So we've got one for each position here. Starting with myself, I'm going for a running back, and this is a guy that has been sort of in the top tier at some point throughout this season, whether it was entering the season or early season, and has had a good season, but I think his time is up. So it's Travis Etienne, running back 8 in ADP, and I think RB8 is actually probably fair for Travis Etienne. I've seen rankings recently where he's still people's RB5. Some people have got him RB10. So there's a bit of a range there. But this is just based off Travis Etienne is now in a tier that I touched on there that's not in that top 6, where I'm really not that interested in this tier of running back unless I'm going for a back-to-back championship or I just missed out. Travis Etienne, I feel like, could give me a couple of years of production going forward. Might be best just to hold on to him. But if I haven't got any of those top 6 running backs that I feel comfortable with, that we've named, I just think there's a massive gap between them and the next group of guys. I just think looking at his usage, I dived into his usage today, and it's not been great. The second half of the season, his stats are quite worrying. So first half of the season, before his week 9 bye, he was averaging 80% of the snap percentage, averaging 23.25 touches per game, which is elite usage. After the bye, went down to about 64% of snap percentage and averaged 16 touches per game. So there's 7 touches per game drop, which is pretty big. The fantasy production definitely was more up and down. It wasn't more sort of stable. It wasn't giving you that baseline. There was weeks. I know the championship week he had a big week, but there was weeks leading up to it where he wasn't the stud, and they weren't using him that much. And especially when you factor in that obviously Christian Kirk went down second half of the season to a season-ending injury. Zay Jones has hardly featured. He's been in and out of the lineups. And you think when Trevor Lawrence, if he misses any time, they're going to lean on Travis Etienne, but they just haven't. And I just think it's a worrying trend where he could potentially be this level again come next season, 16 touches per game. Maybe they get another running back in there. Who was the guy they drafted that I thought was going to be
the tank?
Yeah. I mean, I thought he was going to be more worked into the offense, but he hasn't been. But I just think they didn't draft him for anything. I think he will be featured more next season. So I just think he's obviously a first-round pick in 2021. He's entering year 4 come next season. They've obviously got that 5th-year option if they want it. Just think he's a safe running back, but he's just not got that ceiling like the top 6 guys have anymore. He's turning 25 actually this month. I just think he's actually finished as the RB2 at the minute. So I just think I'd love to use that right now to try and flip him, to try and move up to any of these top 6 guys. I'm happy to put a little bit on top, or equally, I'd like to sell him and acquire picks, sort of round 2, round 3 picks, on top of perhaps getting another running back, perhaps someone like a James Cook or Rashad White, someone that people don't perceive them to be in the same tier as Travis Etienne, but the production's been there this year and they're set up again for next year to be just as productive. So that's the sort of moves I'd make. I do worry about Travis Etienne. I don't see him being the RB2, RB3 again next year. I think he's going to fall away slightly, so he'd be my first sell.
I think it's an interesting one with Etienne, with the fact that running back 2 on the season, first of all, that blew my mind a little bit. It doesn't feel like that from some of the rosters on. Running back 6 points per game. He's 24 years old. I think he's in an offense that's pretty sexy to most Dynasty players. I see Jags, I see Trevor Lawrence and Ridley and Christian Kirk, all that jazz, and they like the offense, Evan Engram. So, and especially in the UK, everybody's second team's the Jags because they play all the games here. But yeah, I get your point. Can he ever make that jump into that top tier? Probably not. So if he can get one of these guys that may be underperforming, if you can add a little bit on top to move up, it's well worth the pivot. Or can you move down to someone that's going to give you similar output? I think that's a tricky move because to get running back 2 output further down, you have to get lucky on someone like Kyren Williams or Rashad White, which it's very, very difficult to do that on a consistent basis. But I think he's an interesting sell at the right price if you can move up. I'm going to stick with the Jags. Sorry, Jags fans, but Trevor Lawrence, QB9. I think we make a lot of excuses for Trevor Lawrence. The fact that he's this long-haired super dude, had a great college story coming in as a freshman and winning a title, and he went 1 overall. Then he got Urban Meyer, and he got excuses for that. Then they signed loads of wide receivers, and they weren't good enough. And his fantasy performance, I think, mid-season of this year, he had pretty much identical passing numbers to Mac Jones over his career, and people are, oh no, but Urban Meyer, yeah, Mac Jones had Bill Belichick. So yes, I think real life, Trevor Lawrence is a really good quarterback. He could make the jump in real life to be a very good quarterback, but I just think for fantasy, he's what, QB 15 on the year, QB 19 in fantasy points per game, and he's being treated like he's borderline elite, which for me is not. And there's guys that are going behind him, which I think are just really easy pivots. Guys like Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields. I prefer all these guys for fantasy, and it's not particularly close. I think the easiest move is just move to Dak straight up. You'll get that deal done easily.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. They were the three guys I was going to name. They're just going in the same tier, and perhaps less when you look at different rankings websites. They're all going behind Trevor Lawrence because of his perceived age, generational quarterback coming out of college, bounce back up in year 2, but then there's not put it's not accelerated and become what we thought he could be. And I mean, he might get there, but the signs are he's probably not. I don't know what the ceiling is for Trevor Lawrence, especially in the next year or two. I'd much rather take Dak Prescott right now with the elite weapon that he's got in CeeDee Lamb on the offense that's absolutely purring. Yes, an easy move to make. My second sell is DJ Moore. So wide receiver 14, which again, I do think that's fair. I think that's probably roundabout where a lot of people do have him. But I also think that a lot of people show recency bias, and I think they probably have DJ Moore valued higher than wide receiver 14 right now because of the boom games that he's shown with Justin Fields this year. The problem is Justin Fields even going to be his quarterback come next season? That's the big one for me, because if they came out today and said we're not going to draft a quarterback, the number 1 pick is up for sale, Justin Fields is our guy and here's a contract, then yeah, wheels up for DJ Moore. But I just think right now, I think with more doubts creeping in that he's going to be the quarterback. And I mean, they are going to draft a decent quarterback. I think if I was a betting man, I think they're going to take Caleb Williams with the 101, or perhaps Drake May. And those two are really, really good college quarterbacks that I think will make good NFL quarterbacks as well. But there's just too much risk. And if I was a betting man, I'd say they're going to make that pick. Justin Fields is going to be traded away to Atlanta, and DJ Moore's then got a rookie quarterback, and we've seen it before. He's been mediocre with rookie quarterbacks, with half-decent quarterbacks. He's been fine for real life, but in terms of fantasy production, I think DJ Moore has been mediocre. He's put up the yardage. He's not caught the touchdowns. This is the first year that he's shown real chemistry with his quarterback in Fields, and he's been scoring touchdowns. So for me, it's an easy sell. They also hold the number 10 pick. Would they use that on a wide receiver to give their new quarterback, Caleb Williams, a top wide receiver as well? That could easily happen. It's a really good draft class for wide receivers. So I just think that the move to make is to try and flip him, and it would be easily for someone like a T. Higgins, whose value has absolutely plummeted. When you look at Keep Trade Cut, it's absurd where he's ranked. Or you go for a young guy who's on the rise, like a Tank Dell, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, whose value is definitely going to rise. Or I think you can tier up to people like a Chris Olave, who had a terrible fantasy championship weekend, has been fairly quiet on the season, or Garrett Wilson, again, has been fairly quiet. We know that he's had terrible quarterback play. I just don't think you have to put too much on top of DJ Moore right now to get one of those guys that feel certainly much more better about going forward. So DJ Moore, wide receiver 14, I think is fair. It's not an outrageous you have to sell him right now. But I just think there's so much uncertainty with his recent value, his booming games. I think it's worth at least asking the question to maybe try and flip him right now for higher than what he's worth.
Yeah, I think the thought process for me on this, not even thinking about the player or any bias towards him, but just think there's two ways that he could absolutely plummet, or there's a lot of risk involved. One is to draft a quarterback, because he's got this amazing chemistry with Fields. No matter how much hammer he gets in the community, Justin Fields is a great NFL QB. Like, he's above average in my eyes. That's not even thinking about fantasy. I think he gets a really bad rap for that. And then the other thing is the draft a wide receiver. Let's say I keep Fields and draft Marvin Harrison.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
that's not good for DJ Moore. So I know we say that like talent wins out and targets, etc. But if we're talking about a generational level Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out, then that's not great with how poor that OC's been for big spells this season. So yeah, I think there's a lot of risk there. It could depend on what your risk tolerance is. You could potentially hold DJ Moore. He keeps Fields. They don't draft a wide receiver. Then maybe do some sort of bigger trade down and take a wide receiver at the top of the second, or in round 2, which is a better complement, maybe a bigger dude or something. But it all depends on your risk tolerance. I like DJ Moore. I think he's finally come to shine with a quality QB. But yeah, like you said, when he's had rookie QBs or bad QBs, he's not been as good.
Yep. So we'll move on to the final sell, and it's had to be the tight end position for the OCD.
Yeah.
Kev, who's your sell?
And again, this isn't about me hating the player. It's just more about, and this applies to pretty much all the sells, really. You've got to think about, can they ever rise in value or get to a level where they're consistently performing at that high end? It's Jake Ferguson, tight end 9 at the market. I think his output in overall points per game is about tight end 9 to tight end 11, so very similar range. It's purely on, can he ever make that leap? And I don't think he can. I think there's a lot of risk that could potentially happen this offseason. You've got Cooks and Gallup. What's going to happen with them? Who do they replace them with? Is it going to be a more proficient running back than the absolute terrible Tony Pollard, who's quietly had one of the worst running back seasons I can remember for an healthy running back? CeeDee Lamb's obviously a machine at the moment. So, yeah, Ferguson's become more boom bust as Lamb's grown. And I think there's a lot of risk at tight end 9. There's, again, guys going behind him, which are absolute Hall of Famers like David Njoku. So, there might be another guy as well that could be a buy at tight end, but I'm going to hold that one back and maybe let someone else on this show speak about him.
Oh, you're just setting up so nicely, Kev. But I agree. I agree with Jake Ferguson. I think the tight end landscape has changed quite a bit this season heading into next season, and there's a lot more options that we're comfortable with, what I feel comfortable with. And if Jake Ferguson is my tight end 1 on my team, I really don't feel like I can compete with the tops. There's probably top 7 or 8 decent tight ends, and then you've got people like Njoku, who's just been world class, elite, just unbelievable production. That is in that same tier that can just reach a higher ceiling than Jake Ferguson. So I just think he's in the right area where you need to either pivot up or pivot down and pick up capital. So we'll move on to our biggest buys going into 2024. So Kev, over to you first, and I'm in full agreement with this. Absolutely love your first pick at wide receiver.
Yeah, I nearly went to Higgins, if I'm honest, which is funny you mentioned him just then as a guy to go after. But Jaden Reed, wide receiver 26th in the market, just to give some context. This is a guy that's come in as a rookie, played with a QB that's got question marks. I think he's put some else in Jordan Love. He's took over the wide receiver room. He's been great as a rusher, as a receiver. And currently, in fact, points per game, wide receiver 26. He's his market value is wide receiver 26. He's a rookie. He's missed parts of, I think, 4 games through injury as well. So actually, if you're looking at pure snaps, it's more impressive. I just think 26 is wrong. I'd have him neck and neck with someone like Addison, personally, I think. Addison's never going to be the one there. Reed's already the one where he is. So that's one guy I just want to tout out, that Reed should be close to Addison. He should be closer to JSN as well. I just think it needs to be a close group for those rookies at the top.
Yeah, agree. And I tweeted it today. I still don't really know what Jordan Love is in terms of, is he a really good quarterback? Is he not? But you can't fault the production and him being able to produce with these wide receivers, especially Christian Watson not being there for most, almost feels like most of the season. But Jalen Reed has emerged as the wide receiver 1 of a pretty decent bunch now. And his usage has been absolutely great. So if that continues, then he smashes wide receiver 26 going forward. And yeah, I'd definitely want to be buying him right now. So I'll move on to quarterback position, and I absolutely love this guy. Kev, I think you love this guy as well. Anthony Richardson. I love buying injured quarterbacks because I think you always feel like you get value. I just think people just have Richardson ranked a bit below RB8 in terms of the market value, just because of people like Dak, who was unbelievable elite, who was lower than him in value. You've got Kyler that's coming back, obviously Tua with that awesome offense. I just think there's a chance to get Richardson for a little bit of value, and I just think people forget how good he was from game 1, means though he was a raw prospect. Quarterback 4 week 1, quarterback 19 week 2, then got injured. Quarterback 2 in week 4. I mean, that's elite finishes, elite numbers for the first 3 starts of his NFL career. Obviously, then got injured. I mean, I'm a guy that's already got quite a bit of Anthony Richardson, but I'd love to actively go out there and buy some more. I just think the ceiling is absolutely huge, where I think he can be in a year's time if he learns to protect his body a bit better and not take these massive hits. I think he could be ranked in the top 6-7 quarterbacks in terms of Dynasty. I do think he can be in that Jalen Hurts mold, that Lamar Jackson mold. Just needs to take care of his body a bit more. So yeah, I just think that ceiling is there. Love going after these guys, taking a bit of a risk where the ceiling is massive. I wouldn't take a risk on a guy that hasn't got a massive ceiling, but I love Konami code quarterbacks. Richardson fits that mold perfectly. Yeah, I just think you can probably pivot up from a Jordan Love that's absolutely smashing it, quarterback 5 on the season. What have you got to add to get to Anthony Richardson? A couple of seconds, maybe a first. I'd probably make that move. I'd offer Trevor Lawrence straight up for Anthony Richardson. I think that's a good move to make. So yeah, that's my quarterback buy heading into 2024.
Yeah, I think people are put off by the fact that if you look on fantasy points per game, it's QB 12. He's had 2 games where he played about 30% of the snaps. So it's a very small sample size, but those 2 games he played the full amount is QB 1 fantasy points per game. Obviously, that's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comparison, but yeah, we know the Konami upside's there. I think he's someone that I was massively on way before the draft, and it potentially looks like it's going to be good, but he does need to learn to not try and be Cam Newton and he can run over people, because this is the big boy league, and I think as long as he does that, he's definitely a buy. QB8's got the potential to be QB1 in Dynasty as well. So you might see me tearing up then. It's because I love Anthony Richardson so much. It's not the absolute bug I've got, but one of the biggest, when we say biggest buys going into 2024, my OCD, we've got to talk about every position. I thought I'd leave you tight end because you didn't talk about tight end on the previous one. So I went running back, and it was really tough to think about biggest buys at running back because, honestly, I think it's difficult to be buying any running back right now with all the risk of getting to next September when your fantasy season starts with not knowing the situation or injuries or anything that could happen in that offense, lose key, run block or something like that. So I went more of a process play. I could have said someone low down in the rankings like Antonio Gibson or, I don't know, Devin Singletary, guys that are in the 40 to 50 range in rankings. And yeah, you might be able to get them, but surely Dynasty Manager's thinking we need running backs. Let's see what happens with their landing spots. And it might be more difficult to get those without hiding them in a deal. So process play I went for running back is when you're doing trades at this point in the season, you don't need depth at wide receiver. Anyone that's not a top 50 wide receiver in terms of value or points per game, if they can't get there, they don't need to be on your roster. You can always find these on waivers. Literally, the move to make when you're doing a trade. Let's say you're trading for QB to QB. I'm going to pivot from Trevor Lawrence to Dak Prescott. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to stick a wide receiver in and I'm going to get the running back 3R team. So I might go for Pierre Strong or Kevin Harris or Amari Mercado or something like that. Just try and fill your bench with running backs rather than wide receivers. Just remember as well, this part in the off-season, there's no waivers. If your leagues have stopped waivers, there's no access there. It's an easy way to get a few lottery tickets to see what happens through free agency and the draft.
Yeah, absolutely sound advice. And these are the guys that can rise up in value the most with an injury next season or just in a situation where they're the RB1. They just see a spike in value. So I love acquiring pieces cheap, throw-ins in deals, and then you can flip them when they have spike weeks. So yeah, love that. Tight end position, the buy is the same guy I spoke about a few weeks ago, and it's Michael Mayer, tight end 12 on market value. And I feel perhaps even stronger than I did back then. I think the fact that he's missed the last couple of games, I love that just because, again, he's going under the radar. Whereas people like Njoku have exploded, won championships. Jake Ferguson has been good. Cole Kmet has smashed it this year. Tucker Kraft has come on and people are talking about him. Just think Michael Mayer's got the profile that I really like. I think he's been slept on. I think he's had a half-decent season this year. He was the tight end 21 on the year until he got injured. He had a few tight end 1 weeks. I just think it's not been spectacular, but we don't always expect it to be a Sam Laporta season from every tight end that's drafted early. This guy was drafted 35th overall. I think the team really like him. I think you've got to look at the situation. They're going to have a new quarterback next year. Is Devontae Adams going to be the star wide receiver? Is he going to even be on the roster? I just think that he's been totally overshadowed by Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid from this class. I had them right there with those guys in terms of a rookie draft profile. Really liked him. I just think he's going to perhaps take the more Trey McBride route and break out a bit later, which is the classic route for rookie tight ends. I just think I'd be happy paying a late second for Michael Mayer right now. I just think this is someone that you can put in as part of a bigger trade because people aren't talking about him. They're going to want to refresh on these other rookies coming in. Really like his profile. Think he's got the chance to break out and be sort of a top 6-7 tight end come this time next off season.
Yeah, I think just quick point on succession plan. If you're unfortunate enough to have Travis Kelce, try and get Michael Mayer on that team as well. And then you've got your next person in, rather than thinking about it when he does retire or falls off a cliff, then you've already got him on your roster.
Sound advice from the Dynasty mind. And with that wraps up tonight's show. So we have recapped week 17 of the Dynasty season. The fantasy season is over, but the rookie season's just beginning. So it's exciting time. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Fantasy Wildcard and at Wildcard Dynasty. And join us for our show every single Tuesday. So thank you once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you again soon.